Hey, welcome back to Cheating Wife, the best channel for cheating stories. Like and subscribe to the channel for cheating stories like this.
My life a wreck. There isn't a person on the planet with whom I can discuss this. I'm not sure whether I need counsel, a pep talk, or both. My primary account is where I post memes and other nonsense. But I threw this away because I'm going insane trying to survive. Life has driven me to the brink of insanity, and I'm battling to regain my integrity. But I'm not sure what the virtuous things are to do, say, or think. I suppose I should start by saying that I'm composing this in a hospital room. My wife and I were in a car accident about 7:30 a.m. yesterday. I barely had a few scrapes and bruises to show for it. Mari, my wife, was injured with a crushed shoulder, a shattered collarbone, 3 broken ribs, and a punctured lung. They anticipate her to completely recover, but for the time being, she is extremely sedated. It's a tough undertaking to write this on a phone. But I have the time right now to push through, even if I'm not sure I have the will to do so. Obviously, I wouldn't be posting in this sub if everything in our marriage was fantastic. I can't see my wife being unfaithful in any manner. My heart is shattered. I feel incomplete, like if a piece of me is gone. Worst of all, that component is sitting about 3 feet away from me. I'd seen us drifting away over the previous 3 months, but I couldn't put my finger on why. We are both 34 years old. Mari and I have been friends since we were kids. We started dating in high school and continued through college. She is the only lady I've ever done anything physical with. She used to be able to say the same thing. We married a year after graduating from college and had our first kid, Michael, the following year. Carrie, our daughter, was born 3 years after my son, and she started a life of my trying to treat her rotten. I adore my children more than life itself. I'm not sure I'd be here right now if it weren't for them. Thank God, they were not engaged in the accident. They were staying at my parents' house for the night. Yesterday afternoon, we were supposed to fly down to Florida for a cruise. Obviously, all of that has been cancelled. My wife, on the other hand, opted to go out with her closest friend despite my pleas to hurry home and not drive about in the snow. She stated she and her closest friend Rebecca were simply going out for a couple drinks since they hadn't seen each other in a week. I went to bed and slept well until around 5 a.m. I stood up and peered out the window to find that my wife's vehicle was no longer parked out front, but we'd received several additional inches of snow. Mari and Becca, I supposed, got a bit too intoxicated and slept at her apartment. I pulled on some clothing and climbed into my SUV. Before I left, I contacted Mari to advise her not to drive because the snow was too thick and that I was on my way to pick her up. It was still unread. I've lost count of the number of times I've pondered what might have occurred if she had read that text. I'd still be deceiving myself. I'd still have a gut feeling about it. But I wouldn't be in the total despair I am today. I arrived at Becca's and parked in front of her apartment. I reread the message and discovered that it had not been read. I had thought Mari would have read it and be ready when I arrived. But I resigned myself to the notion that I would have to go in and rouse her up. I stepped in and glanced to my right at the TV room, which was unlocked. Nobody was dozing off on the couch. I didn't want to wake Rebecca up in her bedroom, which was downstairs. So I climbed the stairs to her guest room and unlocked the door. Then my life was over. When I walked into the room, I saw 2 heads peeking out from behind the blankets. I recall bending down to draw the blanket closer to me. I even saw my wife resting her head on a shirtless man's chest. The next thing I remember is Becca, Mari, and this half-naked man I'd never seen before attempting to get me away from him. If they hadn't, I'd be in prison right now. But I honestly can't recall anything. So, right or wrong, I don't feel too badly about it. On the other hand, my wife. That, however, varies from minute to minute these days. When I came to, the guy stated he'd take his friend to the hospital. Mari sobbed uncontrollably as Rebecca and I yelled. I informed her and my wife that I was going and that she had 5 minutes to get in my vehicle or not come home. She arrived in 3 minutes. It's never a good idea to be upset when driving in the snow, even if you have 4-wheel drive. However, another car swerved into our lane and drove us into a guard barrier. Mari's injuries were the result of this. Thank God for airbags, since the vehicle rolled. But we made it. The kids had no idea we suffered a car accident. I have not contacted anybody. I should have done so. But this wasn't simply a shambles. My life has been shattered, and I'm attempting to assess the extent of the harm before involving others. I'm numb, but I'm in a lot of pain, and it's not from the crash. I feel as though I don't even know who is in that hospital bed. I have so many questions for her. But I'm not interested in any of the replies. She clearly no longer loves me. No one with a soul would betray someone they care about. So I have to wonder whether she has ever loved me. And now that she has cheated on me, would I want her to love me again if it were possible? I'm not sure when she initially started cheating. But, in my opinion, the moment she did, our marriage was over. The oaths had been breached. She divorced us, and we are no longer man and wife. I don't need a divorce lawyer to declare my marriage null and void, she has already done so. As a result, I am no longer bound by the pledges I made. A huge part of me simply wants to leave this place. I want to contact her parents and tell them what she did and what occurred, and then tell them that she is still their issue after all these years. For better or worse, we said, and I meant it. However, we are no longer married. Part of me wants to write her a message and tell her that it's too terrible that worse things occurred after she stopped our relationship. My children are the only thing keeping me in this terrible room. I'm dying to see them right now. However, I have a few scrapes on my face and neck. If they saw me, they'd know something had occurred. My children need my wife, as much as I believe she has polluted herself and our family. I believed I had found my life mate. And, as bad as she turned out to be, my children need a mother figure in their lives. There will be discussions in which I am not qualified to participate and would not know where to begin. There will be injuries that need kisses rather than being instructed to walk it off. I'm a great father, but I can't be a mother at the same time. Please, someone assist me. How can I sit here and gaze over someone who has so ruthlessly stabbed me in the back? Should I summon her parents? What should I tell them? I'm not sure why I'm here, particularly with her parents. They'll know I'm irritated if I don't tell them what she did. What in the name of God do I tell my children? Yes, I can tell them we were in a car accident. But I'm not the kind to put on a brave front. Obviously, my wife does it effortlessly. When I dislike someone, it appears on my face. They will understand that I am upset with their mother. How did my life get to this point? I'm already aware that I need to consult with a lawyer. But how can I deal with this? I didn't believe my post had been accepted since it took so long. I just recently began receiving alerts, so I apologize for not replying to anyone who left comments in an attempt to assist sooner. Update: for some reason, I was unable to react to the questions in my original post. Because this is a throwaway account, it could contain anything. But I could respond to comments, but no one could see them but me. I attempted to publish this update on the infidelity sub last night but was unable. Hopefully, the same problem will not occur with this upgrade, and I will be able to provide feedback so that others can better help me. Please accept my apologies to everybody who did leave a response. It was both appreciated and beneficial. After my original post that day, I opted to remain in the hospital room for one more night. With Mari drugged and the lights turned out, I reclined in the chair, staring at the ceiling and listening to the medical machinery. I lay there, wondering how in the world my life had gotten to that point. Part of me felt like I was bestowing undeserved kindness on her simply by being in the same room with her, but another part of me adored her. I didn't want to experience that kind of love. I honestly felt weak for having any affection for her. Over and over in my head, I realized there was no going back to the way things were. It felt as though a natural calamity had devastated the life we had created. I sobbed. I sobbed uncontrollably. I knew a large chunk of my life was over, and it was a pivotal event in my life. I excused myself when the nurse came into the room the following morning to collect blood. When Mari awoke, she saw me walking out the door and yelled to me, but I pretended not to hear her. I went out to have some breakfast. I haven't had much of an appetite since learning the news. I attempted to pass the time by eating and scrolling through my phone. I had left an unopened text from Becca inquiring where Mari was. At 7 a.m., I figured it was late enough to knock on her parents' door. Her father was an early riser. I intended to speak with him first, and if he felt his wife needed to hear it, he could wake her. I observed smoke rising from the wood burner in his workshop out back and knocked before going in. He saw the scrapes on my neck and the bruise on my face. I explained that there had been an accident and that Mari had suffered the worst of it. But that we needed to speak about it. He probably believed I was talking about the accident, so he roused my mother-in-law to hear what I had to say. We sat in the kitchen while I told how a motorist in the oncoming lane strayed into our lane while driving around a bend. I managed to keep us on the road despite the larger car and all-wheel dip until we hit the guardrail. The passenger side door snagged one of the concrete-mounted vertical I-beams. Mari was struck severely even with side airbags. She had several injuries, but I assured them that she was stable and that she would make a complete recovery. They both sobbed as they realized their daughter had suffered but would still be there for them to cherish. As soon as they hinted, they would be there to support me in whatever way they could in caring for Mari. That's when I pulled over and explained that the crash wasn't what I'd come to inform them about. They seemed perplexed when I described waking up that morning and sending a text to go out in the snow to check on my wife. I told them about sneaking up on their daughter and a man I'd never seen before and reflexively hitting him over and again. They were both taken aback. Then I informed them what room she was in at the hospital and stated that I always wanted them to be a part of the kid's life so that they could stay friends with me. I informed them that my father was looking after them at the time. However, I was divorcing their daughter because she had violated our marriage vows and was no longer my wife. I was leaving their house and drove to my father's house to inform the kids about the accident. I was also planning to inform them that we were breaking up and would no longer be living together. I wasn't about to tell kids their mother was a liar. I told my ex-in-laws that although I was disappointed that things had to end the way they did, at least I could claim I wasn't the one who wrecked our marriage and my life. They attempted to convince me that I shouldn't be so quick, she made a mistake, and all the usual nonsense. I simply smiled and went out, telling them how much I'd enjoyed having them as in-laws over the years. When I arrived to my father's house, I obviously had a lot on my mind that I wanted to get off my chest. I entered into the kitchen, where I saw my father drinking coffee. All he knew was that I was supposed to be aboard a large yacht in the Caribbean. He came to a halt and inquired as to what I was doing there. I just grabbed him, embraced him, and sobbed like a kid. He was the kind of person who wanted to know what was going on but knew he needed to let me cry it out before probing. He walked me to the den and put me on the sofa before leaving to get my mother. We both advised her to start with a cup of coffee, but she understood that if I was there alone so early, it was because I had something awful to tell them. I began by explaining Mari's adultery, my finding her, and leaving Becca's. Then I told them about the crash and how horrible it was. I informed them about Mari's injuries and said that I'd just alerted her parents an hour earlier so they could come see her. My parents were also taken aback. My mother has now asked me what I intend to do. They both sobbed when I informed them that the only choice I had was to divorce Mari and be the best father I could be for my children. As our chat came to a close, I heard my daughter Carrie shout "Daddy" and dash down the stairs toward me. That woke up my kid, who had been sleeping downstairs for a few minutes. I hadn't seen them in so long that I simply spent time embracing them and was overjoyed to see them. It took them a while to discover my scratches. I informed them about the accident and how their mother was in the hospital but would be okay. I told them Mari's parents would pick them up and take them to meet their mother, and that was the end of it. I spent the day with my children, playing, chatting, hugging, resting, and laughing with them, and they made me want to live again. To be honest, I was on the fence about continuing until that moment. They are, nonetheless, worth living for, safeguarding, and cherishing. Because my wife's phone was damaged in the crash, no one had received an answer for many days. I began receiving messages from my Mills phone early that night and realized they had to be from Mari. I choose to disregard them. They continued intermittently on and off throughout the night, turning off alerts. The next day, I met with 3 different legal firms about filing for divorce. I'm not sure I want or need a formal divorce. However, this will result in the division of assets and the determination of custody of our children. What she does with whoever is no longer of interest to me. I met with 2 of them, and I preferred the latter. I'm going to meet with the 3rd-rated lawyer to see if he can wow me. If not, I'll go with the best divorce lawyer from the 2nd company. In any case, I'll have eliminated 3 prominent legal sources from her list of options. In my book, that's a victory. My biggest concern is custody. I'm not going for full custody, and even if I could obtain it, I wouldn't want it. They need the presence of their mother in their life. But, because of what she did, she will never be a part of my life again. A go-between can send the kids off on time whenever they need to be there. There is no reason in the world for me to ever speak to her again. I clearly didn't know her, so why would I keep interacting with a stranger? I returned to work the next week after what would have been our trip. I didn't tell anybody at work that we weren't going or anything about the crash. And, of course, they'll see me driving the rental vehicle and wonder whether I acquired a new automobile. I'm not sure whether I need to go through things with HR. But I don't want my personal affairs to be broadcast for everybody to see. Even without the news seeping out, I feel ashamed. Divorce is occasionally necessary, but it is always a failure. But I'm tired of being an anchor for a ship that has sunk. And, for those who insisted on being tested for STDs, I got a thorough screening, which came back clear on everything, thank God. Even that was enough to make me feel like a trench coat despite the fact that I had done nothing wrong. Mari, I presume, has left the hospital at this point. Her parents made no effort to bring her to the home. They couldn't have reached me anyhow since I wasn't checking Mari's SMS. I'll be done with the worst mistake of my life as soon as I have the divorce papers filed and her served. Her actions rendered all of that time ineffective. If I had to do it all over again, I would not do it. I would want a life with someone else, someone who would be devoted and true. Her greatest gift is what she purposefully discarded: the capacity to be relied on. From having someone you could call your own to being completely alone. That's what I'll miss the most. But I know it was all a deception, and I meant nothing to her. A beautiful falsehood will entice them while an ugly reality would repel them. I'm not one of those individuals. Many people wanted to know who my wife had cheated on, why, and how long it had been going on. I'm sorry I can't provide that information. But I'm not interested in finding out. There is no need to cheat unless someone really holds a gun to your head. Beyond that, you are evil if you have created a life link that you have pledged to preserve and then decide to wreck it with the other person. I wish I'd never met her and instead took a chance on someone else. She had no right to give me a life and then take it all away from me. The guy I was before her betrayal will never exist again, and the woman she was will never exist, and the life I had is a facade in ruins that no one wants to live in.